about the things.
And welcome to the Corner Cafe. I am Rachel Maines, and today we're going to have a special show. I was honored to be on the Humanity versus Tyranny podcast with PK, Steinmark-Stevinson and Ryan Schuiling. And they're actually coming on the Corner Cafe next week, so make sure and tune in for that. But here's an excerpt from an interview that they did with me. Enjoy.
Welcome, everybody. Rye, how you doing?
Hey, hanging in there.
Good. We have a special guest tonight.
We do. Very talented.
And so let's start with our quote. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may show how to answer everyone. Colossians 4:6. Our guest is all things in media and communication, and I want to give her intro and bring her on. Our words can either build up or tear down. Our guest today is an expert in how to work words. She is a professional consultant and influencer for all venues of media. Her Corner Cafe entertainment spreads the most important, relevant, and never-ending words spoken by Jesus Christ, giving us not only a way, but the way. Welcome, the very talented Rachel Maines, communications guru. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's
I just wish I could give you both a hug in the studio, but we'll have to make that happen soon.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to meet you. So first, tell our listeners, who is Rachel Maines and who is, tell us how you got into what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the honor. Well, I currently work in radio, and I'm operations manager for a radio station, and I'm also a singer-songwriter. I started my career, actually, I was in TV news at first after college, and before that, a Christian TV station. And then I went to radio, and my boss at that time, he said, I think it would be really great. I have this idea for this program to feature local artists, since I was a local artist. So I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And who knew that it would still be going on to this day? It's been about over 18 years plus of my radio program, Corner Cafe Radio. Mm-hmm. So, and I named it after my album. So, alongside all that, I have a company where I do consulting, and I help people integrate all their systems together, their blog and their website, and also their newsletter and their social media, to make it a system that's doable and workable. And I do that on the side, and I have a couple clients in addition to my full-time at the radio station.
That is great. Now, in one of your articles I was reading where you said that radio was the hardest for you. How was that compared to TV and all the other venues?
Well, I think with radio, it's it's a long-term idea. I think in terms of radio, it's not a quick fix, and I think that you have to have the stamina to realize, this is something that's going to be a long-term plan, and to gain listeners as well. So for me, it was just, I love television, I love videos, I love all that kind of stuff, but radio, I feel like, is just, with the interview, you don't have the visual, so you have to make it really interesting. Not having that video, not having that visual, and just to also kind of, realize that, to gain listenership and also to just be trusted, it's a long-term commitment. And hopefully that makes sense. But
no, it really makes sense.
Okay, yeah, because I want to hear, how you have your podcast and you've been in the industry, what you feel about that as well.
Well, I was in the industry a long time ago when disco was in, and I was a disc jockey, and I did ads on the radio, back with KIMN, all the old radio, But I got into this. This just fell in our lap, and we were blessed. God just threw Ryan right in front of us, and he's been unbelievable, and he's guided me this whole time on this podcast. And I couldn't ask for a better executive producer. But
wonderful, yeah.
The thing is that I wanted to ask you that is, it's this communication thing. It's like you've been schooled in every avenue where people have, every venue and avenue of media. I don't care if it's TV, if it's news, if it's, entertainment. You've been there. And just for you to tell us what it is and how would you communicate? The most important tips on communicating with one another in each of those.
Ooh, that is a wonderful question. I think to say something really impactful on either medium, and something I'm still trying to fine-tune, is to say it simply, but say a lot in the most simplest form. I think nowadays, especially with all the mediums, with the TV, with the social media, with the radio, with the podcast, we're really inundated with a lot of information. And none of us can handle all the information we see every day. I know I'm trying to keep up just with my emails and my inbox messages. So I think the most effective way is to figure out, what do you want to say, but how can I say this with a lot of impact, but very simply?
Mm-hmm. So, like, if you were giving a speech, say, for an example, I remember when I was young and I had a really wise older brother, and he said, now remember, when you're speaking to a group of people, you have to direct it as if you're speaking to a group of 8th graders. Is that a rule you would use?
That is a really great question. I think so. I mean, depending on the industry I'm working with, of course, if I'm blogging or I'm doing newsletters. But I think so. I was talking with a client recently, and we were talking about writing styles, and we were kind of hashing that out, and we both agreed, and I really liked his writing styles. I help with an e-blast, and I was saying, what you do when in your writing, which I really like, is you say it very simply and concise and to the point. And so, I think that probably using in a general sense a lot of big words and over-explaining things is probably not the best route if you're going for a generic overall audience.
Well, another thing, too, is like when we were young and we would be talking to people and I'd be wanting to tell people things, I'd say, now, look, picture this, because I have to always see it. And then you would describe it. And that's kind of what you were talking about on your first answer to the questions, was about how you get them to see what you're trying to say. So,
right.
If that's the case, what do you, what in your life led you to the point of doing and realizing your purpose was spreading, say, like the gospel or your message, the gospel message? Do you do it so that people can picture whatever you're talking about?
That was a very interesting question. I love your questions. For me, when I got started in media, honestly, I had no idea I would have my own radio show. Even when I went into news, I didn't, dream of the things and the doors that opened for me. But I kind of just went, go with the flow, and I went through doors that God opened for me, even if I felt like, I don't think I'm qualified. I even told the radio station manager when he first hired me, and I got hired for traffic, he's like, we'll probably use you for voiceover stuff. I was like, oh, no, you won't. My voice is too young. But, I'm just one of those people. It's like, well, if someone gives me an opportunity, I'll try it. I think that's the thing we all should do. And I think with the Lord, too, he can use us best when we are vulnerable and we're open to things that we may not think that we're qualified for. I think we just kind of have to jump, I did bungee jumping once in Australia. I felt pressured because my stepdad went first and then my older brother, and I was 18. I was like, I got to do this. But I think it's kind of like that feeling like, ooh, I'm kind of scared. I don't really want to jump, but I'm just going to jump. Mm-hmm. And I think with that, the Lord will really honor that. And it's always a vulnerable feeling to do something that you don't feel qualified for. But I think that's where the adventure lies. And so kind of to wrap up your question, with all these different mediums like TV and radio, and even with my company, I definitely didn't feel qualified. I had a friend who had a PR company at the time talking to me about it, and she's like, you know what? We'll be your first client, and you know enough people, you'll make it work. So I left the full-time job with one client, which obviously wouldn't pay the bills, but people came. I just kind of leaped again. So I think that with my radio show, Corner Cafe, it's been the same mode. I started with local artists because I knew a lot of local artists because I was a local artist, and it grew from there into what it is today.
So, like, when God, all of a sudden, your purpose was just there, and you just took it on, and did you feel like He had prepared you prior to that for the circumstances that He set you in?
I think, yeah, in some ways I did. Talent-wise, I didn't necessarily, but I felt in maturity levels in Him and in certain circumstances, yeah, I did feel like He had prepared me. I think that He opens up doors when He feels it's ready, when He feels someone's ready for something. But I just want to really reiterate, though, we can oftentimes not feel ready or not feel qualified, but I think we could trust Him just to go through that door. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, you fail at it. Okay, we have a fear of failure, but I think if we can get over that and just realize, well, I tried that, I'll go on to something different and trust that something will stick. So I think that to have that adventurous heart as we are given opportunities to learn and to be faithful. In school, I wasn't necessarily the smartest person, but one of the things I know that God placed in me was just the diligence to learn something and to stick with it. So really, I think the best skill we can have, no matter what talent, is just the diligence to stick with something and do the little things every day. And after a while, you do those little things every day, it can grow into a big thing.
Yeah, my dad used to say, don't get your dauber down. And if we would fail, he'd say, just pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and keep going.
Right.
And
exactly.
It's kind of that coaching thing. But I kind of see you in your communications business and company. How does your faith enter into your purpose of coaching others in the game of communication?
Oh, great question. I started, I had my company for about a little over 9 years, and I started with a lot of Christian companies, even if they weren't outright Christian. I had a nonprofit, Extreme Community Makeover. She's a good friend to this day, and she's a Christian, even though her company isn't saying, we are a Christian company or Christian nonprofit. So I felt like I was ministering to those who were in ministry. I had a couple who were marriage counselors, who are marriage counselors, and pretty well known in France. They're from France, but they live here in Colorado, and they give marriage counseling. So a lot of my clients were Christians, so I was just come alongside them just to help them get clear and to offer, whatever they needed. I started my company as an executive assistant, and of course it would grow into communications because that was my passion and that was my experience. So I did merge into communications for the last 4 years of that.
Wow.
Going full time.
So at what point did you decide, I just want to have a show where I can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ? When did that hit you, and how did you go about doing it? Yeah,
thank you. I go back to, being in radio. I was doing traffic, and the manager said, hey, I'm giving you this show, and, give it a shot. And so I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I always had the passion to share the gospel through my music, but then to also be given an opportunity to share the gospel with the stories of other people who are musicians and artists. That was such a joy. So, being able to share different styles of music and different people with different backgrounds and going to different denominations of churches. We had everything from hip hop to jazz. We had a violinist, so just the variety. For me, the passion was sharing the story, of course, of their music and who they are, but then showing the variety, not only of music, but variety of people in Christ who know Him. To me, is beautiful. So now, as I merged and became underneath the brand Influencers TV, now we have influencers on the show of different varieties. Recently, we had reporter Greg Nieto on. So still that passion now is to kind of educate people and then show people, if it's a Greg Nieto, how did he get into news? Give people kind of practical tips as well of how people can make their dreams or their callings possible in Christ and be a witness wherever they are. And if you hear my dog, that's my dog Meadow. She's barking a little bit.
Yeah, Ryan was telling me she might come in studio and bring her dog, so I didn't get to meet Meadow either.
Yeah, but next time we'll make it work.
Okay, great. Well, so then do you feel like in today's world, if people would just stop for a moment and ask themselves, what would Jesus do before they spoke or acted, that the world would change for the better?
I think so. I think just the skill of just stopping and thinking about what you're doing is a great skill to have for any situation. Of course, asking yourself, what would Jesus do in this situation is beautiful. I think that spreading the gospel, of course, is our mission as Christians, to share the gospel and to share what he's done. And then once he comes into our hearts and he changes us from the inside out. But, everybody's on a different trajectory, I think, some people receive Christ and, within a month or so, they can be really knowledgeable of the word and stuff. And then others, maybe it's just like, a longer curve. I just love how each of us are the Lord knows that we're he made us this way. He made each of us so unique. And I think one thing that we got to remember is that although he may be doing this particular work in my heart, he may have not be doing that particular work in someone else. So I don't think we should judge. I think we should just trust that those that the Lord is working with in his time, he'll work on their heart.
Yeah, and that's why
I like to. Yeah,
I'm sorry, just where he said he doesn't judge, he judges our hearts, He looks at the heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. And he knows, each challenge that each person goes through, what they've had to overcome. We've all had so many different upbringings and we all have so many, different personalities. So he works within that. And I think the best thing for each of us who know Christ is to not look at others and say, Lord, I wish you would change them. I think it's more impactful to be looking inward with him and asking him humbly, what is it that you are working on in me? That's more impactful to me, I think, as believers. And then what a great influence we can have to others who don't know him.
Go ahead.
Rachel, I have a question just to kind of distill it down on the subject of faith. And that is the point in your life where you felt your faith was tested the most, where maybe you had doubts. And then the point in your life where your faith was affirmed the most, when you most knew that God was real, that you believed in him, and that you felt that faith the strongest.
Good.
Oh, you guys have wonderful questions. When I was in college, my family went through a very terrible tragedy. My brother got murdered. He was my older brother. He was 26. He had received Christ, but then was struggling with some addiction problems, trying to get out of some things within that world, then got him murdered. Very challenging. I don't know if it was where I doubted my faith, but it was definitely just grief beyond, and to see my parents grieving. But my dad, he has always been strong in Christ. My brother and I used to talk to each other about our dad and say how amazing he is. And he's so strong, and he brought both of us to the Lord. To see my dad lose his son, such tragedy, but still have faith in Christ and still be strong and dive deeper into that relationship was beautiful. And so
my heart goes out to you there, because my older brother, he died at 22. And my dad told me that's one of the hardest things. He never thought, he didn't know how he was going to be able to see his own son die. That was one of the hardest things. And he was a cop, so he's seen everything.
Yeah.
So I understand that, and my heart goes out to you because I know exactly what you were going through.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, too, this question. Besides Jesus, who do you think has been one of the greatest communicators today?
Besides Jesus, greatest communicators. Oh, gosh. Let me think about that one.
I mean, we all...
I feel like...
Pardon me?
Huh? I feel like I'm kind of stumped on that one.
Well, think about it, and we can come back to it, because it's like everybody talks about how everybody's communication is the big thing now. There is so much out there, like you say, we're just inundated with words all around us, and sometimes just one simple word from somebody has an impact that a whole paragraph from somebody else couldn't even do. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes, that does make sense. And, in terms of the faith, I think Billy Graham was a great communicator in terms of the faith. I know there's others like him kind of rising up, but he had such impact and was able to communicate the gospel. So many people came to Christ during his ministry. So I would tout him as one of the great communicators of the gospel.
Could you give us one of your most memorable times in your career, and then one of the most miraculous?
Yes. Memorable times in my career. I think, I'm going to go back to, two. One in TV, TV news, making friends with longtime friends. She's like a sister to me, Angie Austin. She was the anchor. She's a weather lady and then anchor of Channel 2, and she has a radio show on my station as well, The Good News with Angie Austin. But just memorable having that friendship and not realizing at that time that even till today we would be friends, and I would move on to radio, and then she would come as well. I mean, I only think God can do that kind of stuff. That's just amazing. And we used to pray together before the newscast for our day and for personal things too. We prayed before she got pregnant, we prayed for her babies, and she has 3 beautiful kids who are almost all grown. One's in high school and 2 are off to college. So that's very memorable. Miraculous, I'm going to kind of share a funny but kind of scary story. One time during the news, I was starving, and before the newscast, I talked to James, a production guy, about a light that was out, but we decided we didn't need to change it because it wasn't going to really be in the shots. But he said, hey, I'll come find you after the newscast. I said, great. Well, after the newscast, I'm starving, and I forgot about this light, and James was looking for me. I go to prepare my food in the break room, in the kitchen area, and I choke on my food. I take a sip of water, and the water goes out my nose. Oh. So I'm choking for sure. For sure. So I run out to the newsroom, and I didn't have my wits about me to put my hand over my throat. I was just raising my hands in the air like, help, help. And James was looking for me. And so he knew the Heimlich, and he gave me the Heimlich. So you're quite miraculous. Yeah. It's like, wow, I didn't know I'd be choking. Obviously God did, and this light was out, and James was looking for me. So I could just see, like, wow, Lord, you really do know the entrance from the beginning in our lives. And I feel like he set the whole thing up. And when I don't know what would have happened.
It was like divine providence right there.
Exactly, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
What's funny, I know, right? What's funny about the story, though, is guess what my meal was called? It was called Fun Noodle.
Fun Noodle? F-U-N?
Fun Noodle. F-U-N.
That wasn't too fun.
I had a lot of fun with that meal.
I was going to say, that was the least fun you've ever had eating.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So it's interesting because you're talking about how you and Angie, you'd pray together and stuff. In the media today, it's almost as if in mainstream media, they don't even want to hear the name of God or Jesus. It's like it's a put off to be a Christian or anything that has to do with Christianity. And how did you get around that without being called on or called down on?
great question. I don't know. I just kind of was just myself, and I think those who were Christians, and we all congregated together, but even folks who weren't, I think they were intrigued. And at that time, I was, in a mentoring group for Christian women in media, so I had a lot of support going to a really good church, and I have a really good family. So at that time, I was, just strengthened in my faith, even though I was in my 20s. And I think, being authentic in Christ, people are going to be intrigued because you're going to be different. And I think people who are curious will want to see what that's all about. So I was definitely known as the Christian girl in news, and you never know the impact that you have, whether it's praying with a fellow Christian or just having a positive attitude in an environment that can be high impact and stressful at the same time.
Okay, well, we're going to break right here, Rachel, and we'll come right back, okay?
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to Corner Cafe. And that was my interview with PK Steinmark-Stevinson and Ryan Schuiling on their Humanity Against Tyranny podcast. If you want to listen to the full interview, just go to iHeartRadio and search for the Humanity Against Tyranny podcast, and make sure you give them a follow as well. Next week, I'll be returning the favor and having them on the Corner Cafe, so stay tuned for that. And I want to remind you that Corner Cafe is brought to you by Influencers TV. And Influencers TV is an online course platform. The first course is how to have your own unique radio program that will stand the test of time. You can learn more by going to influencerstv.com/radio. Thanks for tuning in. See you at the Corner Cafe next week.